Hi, my name is Felicia Souza. I've had a lot of difficulties in my life, but I know God has a plan and a purpose for me. I was born and raised in San Francisco in a family of 5. I was the youngest of 3, and we had a good time there. It was the time, it was the 60s, so it was a powerful time there. I know it was big movements were happening and there was a lot going on. We ended up moving to San Leandro when I was 13 years old to get a better life, a slower paced lifestyle. And we are able to purchase a home. And so my dad was really pleased with that. We had difficulties with, my mom was bipolar, so there seemed to be every 6 months there would be an episode of suicide attempt or some dramatic, her freaking out and needing to go to get help. So it was quite a process. My home, it was very dysfunctional, but it was what it was. It was what I only knew. So I ended up realizing that when I went to high school, I needed to find a career path, and I knew I wanted to help others. So I found dental assisting through a girlfriend of mine. So I became a dental assistant. I had been for 18 years, and I always wanted to be a hygienist. So that was my goal in life. As an assistant, I worked at an office that I really didn't care for. So I worked there 1 year, I got my 1-week vacation, and I went to Hawaii. And I had never been there before, and I totally fell in love with the sky. It's beautiful, greens, blues, oranges, and it just was spectacular. I felt very at home and welcomed there. So I ended up staying for 5 years. I got married and had 2 kids, Tony and Tabby. And my husband was, he wanted to be a drill sergeant. He was a little difficult, maybe the right word. So that didn't, well, we ended up moving to Missouri so he can become a drill sergeant, and that just pushed the marriage to the end. When I came home from Missouri, I lived with my dad, and I got situated again. I wanted to go back to school and finish, get a career as a dental hygienist. And I happened to run into my childhood sweetheart, and we hit it off, started hanging out. We spent a lot of time together, 6 to 8 months, and then we decided to become a couple. And we ended up getting married, and I had my daughter Sophia, which she is 25 years old right now. She was born with special needs. She has Down syndrome, which was a very difficult thing to go through. I always thought that she'll be the most beautiful Down syndrome baby there was, so I kind of just accepted it, but it was a little more difficult for other people to see that. So we struggled, and we ended up getting divorced. It just wasn't a healthy relationship, and I needed to be in a healthier place in my life. So we moved on. At that point, I lived with my dad for a while, and then I got my own place, and finished school, got accepted to a dental hygiene program in Visalia. Me and the kids moved there. It was God's handprints were all over it, because I had difficulties with school, but he was right there with me the whole time and pushed me through the very difficult tests and projects, and just motivated me to have a better life and for my children. We moved to Visalia. We moved back. I graduated from dental hygiene. I've been a hygienist for 16 years at the same office. I was very blessed to find where I am now. So it was May 17th, 2004, 4 days before my birthday. My brother lived in San Francisco with his partner, and I was in CPR class, and I got a phone call from his partner that said that the ambulance and the paramedics were leaving. They had been working on my brother for 2 hours, and they weren't able to resuscitate him. He committed suicide, and he passed away. It really rocked my world because I thought I had it. I thought I was doing everything right, and it was all going to be better. And he was the closest one to me and my family. He was very positive and outgoing, and just a really smart and ambitious person. And he was gone. So after Adam passed away, I started reaching out. I had been coming to Cornerstone, but I needed to get more of a smaller group support. So I went to a group they used to have called Focus. It was a singles ministry, a lot of fun activities and good people to be there. And just that's where I met a lot of people who were just my good friends and supported me and helped me grow in Christ and in other ways. We would do a lot of Bible studies and a lot of outings, and just had a really good time. Life was good. It's going smooth, raising the kids. They're all doing well. Tabby was in track and in golf and very active in her high school days. And then Tony had a lot of good friends, was very active in his, they all loved to do skits and plays and interact with each other as doing them, as well as like stunts and like that movie Jackass. But they would do all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So that was my kids. Sophia was doing well. She was good. She was growing and becoming a highly functional little Down syndrome baby. She was beautiful. So it was October 20th, 2006, and I got a phone call to get to Valley Care Hospital as quickly and safely as possible. And I couldn't quite understand that, so I asked, what's going on? And she said that it was Tony, and that I needed to get to the hospital as safely and quickly as possible. And I was like, okay. So I got in my car, and I went down 680 straight to Valley Care, and I felt like my car had lifted off the ground. I know I was going 80, 90 miles an hour, and I just felt like the road, the traffic had opened, and the road I just went flying down the road. I prayed the whole way. I asked God to allow me to see Tony and that he'd be alive the whole way there. And I just prayed numerous times over and over that he'd be alive, and I wanted him to be alive. And I really didn't know what happened, but I just had a feeling. I got there. He was in the emergency room. I got there. I spoke with the nurses and the doctors, and Tony seemed fine. He looked like he was resting. He was okay. And what happened is he had put a shoelace around his neck and waited for his friends to come over because he texted them. I think it was a prank that went bad, and he cut off too much oxygen to his brain. So they moved him up to ICU. A nurse walked with me up there, and I was really fearful. I got very nervous and anxious, and I did not want to go. I could feel my feet moving forward, but wanting to move back, moving backwards. We walked through these big steel double doors and walked over to the rooms, and I looked over to the room number where I thought we were heading, and it was 1207. I felt this warmth wrap around my arms, and the fear just dropped to my feet. And I was like, wow, that was odd. I walked in the room and Tony was fine. He was laying there, and I was rubbing his feet, could touch his hair and his head, and he was like sleeping. That was 7 days of that situation. We'd have people, all his friends came to the hospital and wanted to see him, and so we would allow them to come in. And at one point there were kids everywhere, and one of the nurses said, "What are all these kids doing here?" And one of the pastors that was there said, "They're here for Tony. They love him." And so I was able to get a room for the kids, and they could be in the room and not all over the ICU floor. And and they were able to. I got some paper and pens for them. They were able to write letters and write to him, and some of them could come in and see him. And it was a really trying time. It was beautiful, but yet it was really scary and uncertain and hard. There was also the donors came in and wanted to know about that, and I did want to donate Tony's organs, and so we had to also wait a little while for that to take place, and it was. I just remember there was somebody who brought in a guitar, and there was a big cross in the room, and I mean, it just was like preparing him for heaven. And the day that he passed, I left the hospital. I had stayed there for 7 days straight, so I left that night, and it was exactly the same time that I had gotten there. It imprinted my mind, like, what? That's odd. And then I left, and then we made the arrangements for him, and it was the 27th of October. He was going to have a celebration of life, and hundreds of people came, and it was a beautiful event. It's very sad, but it's a celebration of life. So, we tried to make it that. Then I realized, what are all these sevens? And it's 1207 and 7 days, and the 27th. And I looked it up in the Bible, and it said 7 is a complete and whole number. I realized that Tony's life was complete and whole. God knows that the days that we have here, and that was the amount of his days. And I know he's okay, and I know he doesn't have to be in this world of hardship and heartache and tough stuff. He was a very sensitive, loving person, and as I continue to work with people, I see that often. When Tony passed, I knew that I needed to come to grief care. I took him and his friends, and we all came. And I love the woman who started grief care, with Gail Jonas, and I just knew that there was open arms and a way to get through this there. So I came, and I stayed. I've been there for 12 years, and I feel that it's very necessary to face your grief and go through it, and to learn to have tools and ways to deal with it. In honor to celebrate Tony, I had a woman who is the director for Young Life come to my house and ask me if I wanted to start Young Life group at Livermore High School. Since there had been several losses in the school, when Tony was a sophomore, they lost a girl that he knew, and when he was a freshman, they lost a girl there. When he was a sophomore, they lost a friend of his, and then he was a junior, and he passed away. So I started, with a team of us, we started a Young Life group there at Livermore High, and it still is there to this day. So, there are good things that come out of hardships. I also have dinner for my son's friends every 20th. They come over, and we have a home-cooked meal, and they've been doing that for the last 12 years. I am now working as a hygienist in an office in Livermore. I live and work in Livermore, and I work on me often. I physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, in every way, I try to be as balanced as I can and to give back and to know that, you know, we're only here a short time. It's the afterlife. It's the heaven I look forward to going to. It's getting to be reunited with my loved ones, and that's and making a difference here is really what I have learned that it's all about. Last month I went to Hawaii, and I went by myself. It was an amazing experience. A friend was supposed to go and couldn't, so I went alone, and it was great. I had been out on a rock wall waiting for the fireworks to start, but I noticed this woman was kind of struggling and having some funny reactions to the people in the water, and she was kind of angry, and so I watched her, and she had stood up and walked down the rock wall, and I noticed her calf was bleeding, and she was kind of walking sideways. So I watched her walk down the beach and into the water with her clothes and her purse on. There were people on the beach, and they were attending to her. They were trying to get her out of the water, and she was combative and didn't want to. But at one point, she asked for help, and one of the guys grabbed her and brought her to the beach. They were calling for help to get her some assistance because she was not right. There was something going on with her. It started to rain, and so I went over to them. I had an umbrella, and I went over and I shaded them from the rain. And we got her in an ambulance and off to some care. The group that had helped we were talking, and they were really cool. It started raining some more, and one of them suggested that we go across the street to a restaurant. And so we did. We went over to Lulu's for dinner, and when I walked in, I kind of got our table, got comfortable, and I looked over and I saw this guy that he looked just like my son, and it kind of took my breath away. I looked at them and I go, that guy looks just like my son, and they were like, oh, that's cool. You know, they didn't know me. They didn't know anything about me. So I told them that my son died 12 years ago, and they were like, what? One of the girls went over to him and told him, and he came over to our table, and he said, I just want to tell you that I'm so sorry that that's not right, that, you know, your children should not go before you. And he was the sweetest thing, and he gave me a big hug, and he told me a lot about his life and how he almost died himself, is how he works hard to give back and help others, and he had just also lost a friend 2 days ago. So it was an amazing encounter. I feel like it was a God-appointed meeting, and and I feel like if I hadn't taken the time to deal with my grief and to deal with loss, because we have so much of it in this world, that I wouldn't have been able to be present in that moment. I may have run off to the bathroom and bawled my eyes out, or just been upset, angry, upset, whatever. But instead, I was able to experience that beautiful encounter. I went to grief care initially, and I've stayed, and I'm thankful that I have been able to process, learn tools, and get a better understanding of the grief process. And I call it an education in grief, because we don't know how to do it, but we definitely need to learn and understand how to go through it. It's just been a blessing to me. Although it's very difficult, it's also been my ministry, and I love it. And I'm glad and thankful that I've been able to, given the opportunity to be with these amazing people who help others go through this tragic and difficult trauma. But I'm glad that I got to share with you, and I'm thankful, and I look forward to seeing you at Grief Care.